Right now, as you sit here listening to this, you're floating on a thin shell of rock above the largest, most mysterious realm on our planet. A realm so vast and unexplored that we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest trenches beneath our feet. Imagine just for a moment that while you've been living your entire life on this surface, breathing air and basking in sunlight, an entire civilization has been thriving in the eternal darkness below, being so advanced that they've mastered technologies we can barely dream of, all while remaining completely hidden from our detection. It feels almost impossible, doesn't it? We live in an age of satellites that can map every inch of the Earth's surface, telescopes that can peer into galaxies billions of light years away, and machines that can split the atom and unlock the code of life itself. Yet, despite all this power, the ocean, this immense, heaving body of water that covers most of our world, remains cloaked in shadows. The irony is staggering. Humanity has always looked up to the stars for answers. We send probes to Mars, dream of colonizing other planets, and listen for whispers from intelligent life among the constellations. But in all our searching, we've neglected to ask the question that might be closer, quieter, and infinitely more unsettling. What if the intelligence we're seeking is already here, not above us, but below us? The staggering truth is that Earth is, first and foremost, a water world. Oceans cover 71% of its surface, wrapping the planet in a restless skin of blue. From space, Earth doesn't look like a rocky sphere with oceans on it. It looks like a vast, glimmering orb of water with small fragments of land poking through like islands in a cosmic sea. Yet, despite the dominance of water, our understanding of the ocean is alarmingly shallow. Less than 5% has been explored with any rigor, leaving more than 95% of it shrouded in mystery. Imagine the Mariana Trench, the deepest known place on Earth. It plunges nearly 7 miles into the crust, so deep that Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on land, could sink into it, and more than a mile of water would still remain above its peak. The trench is not alone. It is only the most famous among countless canyons, ridges, and abysses hidden beneath the waves, each one as strange and hostile as any alien landscape we've ever conjured in science fiction. Down there, sunlight never penetrates. The weight of the ocean above crushes with a force that would collapse human lungs in an instant and pulverize metal as if it were paper. Temperatures hover just above freezing, except near volcanic vents that spew boiling chemicals into the abyss. It is a place where survival itself seems impossible, and yet life endures. Life not only endures, it thrives. Even in the Hadal zone, where the pressure is more than 1,000 times greater than at the surface, strange and beautiful creatures exist. Some glow with their own light, conjuring colors and patterns in the blackness. Others drift like living phantoms, their bodies so transparent they seem like liquid shadows. There are fish with jaws of glass and eyes like lanterns, crabs that scuttle along vents where toxic chemicals gush like underwater geysers, and microbes that feast on minerals we once thought poisonous. These organisms don't just survive in conditions that should kill them, they are perfectly adapted to them, sculpted by evolution into forms that defy imagination. Now pause for a moment and consider this. If simple life can adapt to the crushing darkness, why not intelligence? Why not consciousness? Why not something far beyond us? The thought is both thrilling and terrifying. For all of human history, the great existential question has been, are we alone in the universe? We've aimed radio telescopes at distant stars, launched messages into the void, and scanned the skies for signals from extraterrestrial civilizations. But perhaps we've been asking the wrong question or looking in the wrong direction entirely. What if the intelligence we long for has been here all along, watching from the depths, hidden by water, protected by pressure, waiting in silence? We assume that technology requires fire, metal, open skies, and the manipulation of land. But that is simply the story of our technology, our evolution. What if there are other paths? What if a species developed tools and systems not by burning wood or forging steel, but by bending biology, pressure, and chemistry to their will? Our ancestors used fire to cook and forge. An underwater civilization could use hydrothermal vents, bioluminescent organisms, or chemical reactions unknown to us. We tend to think of intelligence in terms of mirrors of ourselves, creatures with hands, voices, and cities built of stone. But perhaps true intelligence doesn't mirror us at all. Perhaps it hides where our eyes fail, thriving in ecosystems we can't enter without machines. There is something profoundly humbling about this possibility. It reframes our place in the cosmos. Maybe we are not the pinnacle of life's grand story. Maybe we are simply a surface species, confined to a thin film of atmosphere and light, oblivious to the vast civilizations, or at least vast minds, that move silently beneath us. Imagine how arrogant it would be to assume that just because we haven't seen them, they cannot exist. The ocean has concealed entire mountain ranges from us, hidden volcanoes that dwarf those on land, and preserved ecosystems we didn't even suspect were possible until the last few decades. If mountains, volcanoes, and forests can remain unseen, why not something more? Consider, too, the way the ocean conceals sound. In the deep, noise travels for hundreds, even thousands of miles. Whales can communicate across entire ocean basins, sending songs through layers of water that carry their voices far beyond the horizon. Our own instruments have detected strange booms, rumbles, and pulses, some explained, many not. What else might be using these channels? What other messages might be coursing through the sea, unheard by us but obvious to those who dwell there? The more we learn about the ocean, the more alien it becomes. It is, in every way, a world within a world, dark, where we live in light, crushing, where we breathe freely, timeless, where we measure our lives by decades. Yet this alien realm is not light years away. It is here, it is below us, right now, beneath the ships that cross the surface, beneath the shores we walk upon, beneath the very floor of our continents. The ocean presses in, filling valleys deeper than mountains are tall, carving canyons larger than anything we've built, guarding secrets older than human civilization itself. And here lies the greatest question of all. If intelligence does exist in these depths, what would it mean for us? Would they reveal themselves? Would they judge us? Would they even care? Or would they see us the way we see the flutter of insects above the ground? Briefly interesting, but ultimately irrelevant to the true symphony of life. We stand at the threshold of one of the most profound questions in existence. Are we alone? Perhaps the answer is not among the stars, but in the abyss beneath our feet. To understand how an advanced civilization could exist in our oceans, we must first journey into a world so alien it might as well be another planet entirely. Beneath the rolling waves, we know from beaches and horizons, lies an environment more extreme than deserts, more vast than forests, more hostile than the vacuum of space. It is Earth's final frontier, yet paradoxically, it has always been with us, pressing against our shores, humming with life just below our sight. For most of human history, the ocean has been a mirror of mystery. Sailors once imagined it held sea serpents and monstrous beings that could swallow entire ships. Even today, with satellites circling overhead and sonar mapping the seafloor, the majority of its volume remains uncharted. It is easier for us to send robots to Mars than to explore the deepest trenches of our own planet. We treat outer space as the great unknown, yet the true alien world lies not above us, but beneath us. To comprehend it, we must descend through its layers, each one stranger than the last. Near the surface lies the epipelagic zone, the sunlit waters where life as we know it thrives. Here, light filters through in shimmering beams, powering photosynthesis, feeding plankton, and sustaining the fish, dolphins, and whales we're familiar with. It is a realm of warmth and color where coral reefs burst with living architecture and schools of fish weave like liquid rainbows. But light, like hope, fades quickly. Beyond 200 meters, the ocean enters the twilight zone, the mesopelagic depths. Here, sunlight dwindles into ghostly fragments. Shapes become silhouettes. Vision becomes unreliable, replaced by an entirely different language, bioluminescence. In this band of eternal dusk, countless creatures produce their own light. Small fish ignite like sparks in the dark, while larger predators dangle glowing lures before their jaws, beckoning the curious into fatal encounters. It is a world of trickery and illusion, where light becomes both weapon and shield. Descending further, we enter the bathypelagic zone, the midnight layer. No sunlight reaches here at all. The darkness is absolute, pressing in like a physical weight. It is a realm where temperatures plummet near freezing and pressure mounts to levels beyond imagination. At these depths, every 10 meters adds the weight of another atmosphere. By 1,000 meters, the pressure is 100 times greater than at the surface, equivalent to being crushed under a mountain of stone. Yet creatures here glide with ease, their bodies adapted into forms that seem almost supernatural. Some have gelatinous flesh that compresses under force without breaking. Others possess antifreeze proteins that keep their blood flowing in icy waters. Here, even life's chemistry is rewritten. Still deeper lies the abyssopelagic zone, a vast, open expanse stretching to 6,000 meters. Few humans have ever glimpsed it directly. Imagine mountains taller than the Himalayas rising unseen from the ocean floor, valleys wider than the Grand Canyon hidden beneath miles of water. The seafloor is not flat but jagged, carved by tectonic forces into ridges, trenches, and volcanic ranges. It is a landscape of fire and ice. Hydrothermal vents spew superheated water into the cold, their plumes rich with minerals that feed entire ecosystems. These vents are paradoxical oases, where boiling jets gush into near-freezing water. Life not only exists, but flourishes. Shrimp crowd around the mineral chimneys. Giant tube worms stretch several feet long, their bodies filled not with digestive organs, but with bacteria that convert chemicals into energy. In this darkness, sunlight is irrelevant. Here, life has found another way. Chemosynthesis, a metabolism born of stone and fire. Finally, there is the Hadal zone, plunging into the planet's deepest trenches. Here, pressure reaches more than 1,100 times what we feel on land. Temperatures hover near freezing. No human could survive an instant. Yet life persists, even here, in forms so bizarre they defy expectation. Snailfish with translucent skin, amphipods the size of lobsters, microorganisms that thrive under stresses that should destroy DNA. The Hadal world is so alien that scientists often describe it as a laboratory for understanding other planets. To visit these depths is to leave Earth in every sense but name. Picture this hidden realm not as a wasteland but as a cathedral of liquid darkness. Vast arches of basalt rise from the seafloor like the spires of sunken cathedrals. Mountain ranges stretch across the abyss in silence, their peaks unseen, their valleys untouched. Creatures glide through the black as if suspended in eternity, glowing faintly, whispering with flashes of light. Imagine standing in such a place, though standing is impossible, and feeling not emptiness but the fullness of life. The silence is not lifeless. It is holy, resonant, a silence filled with the pulse of survival, the rhythm of ecosystems that have thrived for eons beyond human sight. What makes this all the more extraordinary is that life here is not sparse, but abundant. The deep sea is alive with unimaginable diversity. Fish with lantern eyes drift through the dark. Squid extend tentacles longer than buses, their bodies flashing in Morse-like pulses of light. Jellyfish pulse like living chandeliers, glowing in blues and greens. Some creatures camouflage by being invisible, others by erupting in blinding bursts of light. Each is an evolutionary masterpiece, sculpted by pressures, darkness, and time. Consider the paradox of silence. On land, silence often feels empty, but in the ocean depths, silence is alive. It carries vibrations, whispers of currents, tremors from shifting tectonic plates, songs of distant whales reverberating like echoes through stone halls. To creatures of the deep, silence is not absence but presence, the canvas on which every signal is painted. It is not void, but voice. In this alien cathedral, evolution has had the patience of millions of years to sculpt form and function. When we gaze upon anglerfish with jaws like broken glass, or shrimp that glow like fireworks, we are not looking at mistakes or accidents, but at designs perfectly suited for survival in a world we barely comprehend. What seems grotesque to us is beautiful in context, the same way wings are beautiful to air and fins to water. Now imagine evolution pushing further. We marvel at octopuses solving puzzles, at dolphins coordinating hunts, at whales communicating across oceans. But what if the deep, with its vastness, its silence, its endless time, has already sculpted something beyond? What if the forces that shaped bioluminescent wonders and vent-dwelling symbioses have also sculpted minds? Minds unlike ours, but minds nonetheless. This hidden realm is not an empty stage. It is a canvas already filled with masterpieces of adaptation. From fragile transparency to crushing resilience, from glowing beauty to silent patience, life has found countless ways to endure. It is not a stretch to wonder whether it has also found a way to awaken, to become self-aware, to dream in the darkness. But what if evolution didn't stop at creating jellyfish that glow like living chandeliers or fish with teeth like broken glass? What if, in the deepest places, intelligence itself learned to swim? Intelligence, as we're beginning to understand, is not unique to humans or even to land-dwelling creatures. We once believed it was the pinnacle of our species, a gift that set us apart from all others. But the ocean has been quietly reminding us that intelligence wears many forms, each adapted to its own environment, each capable of feats that once seemed impossible. To search for intelligence in the deep is not to indulge fantasy, but to recognize that consciousness may be far more common and far more diverse than we've dared to imagine. Take, for instance, the octopus. With no bones, no protective shell, and a lifespan measured in mere years, it should be little more than prey. Yet within its pliable body lies one of the most extraordinary minds on the planet. Octopuses solve puzzles, escape enclosures, and even use tools. Coconut shells carried across the seafloor to serve as portable shelters. Each arm contains a network of neurons that can act semi-independently, allowing the creature to think not as a single brain, but as a distributed intelligence. They can recognize individual humans, showing distinct preferences and personalities, a trait once thought impossible for invertebrates. In laboratories, octopuses have unscrewed jars, short-circuited lights, and even staged escapes by memorizing the timing of human caretakers. If such brilliance can emerge in a creature with no skeleton, no language in the human sense, and only fleeting years of life, what might evolution achieve in beings given millions of years in the abyss? Consider also the great whales and dolphins, whose societies stretch across oceans. Humpback whales sing songs that evolve over time, with entire populations learning and passing new verses like cultural traditions. Dolphins use signature whistles, names that identify individuals, and some even invent new whistles for their offspring. Orcas coordinate hunts with strategies so complex they resemble military maneuvers, and pods separated by oceans develop distinct dialects, much like human cultures. These creatures show us that intelligence can scale across vast spaces, communicating through mediums humans barely perceive. If dolphins and whales can speak across basins, what might inhabit the far deeper channels of the Hadal trenches, where sound travels further still? Now imagine how intelligence might evolve under the crushing pressure of the deep. In such an environment, delicacy and fragility would not survive. Minds would need to adapt to process information in ways resilient to extreme force. Pressure is not merely a barrier, but a constant, a condition that could be woven into physiology and thought. High pressure alters chemistry itself, slowing metabolic reactions. But slowness can be a gift. In the deep, where time stretches into long patience, intelligence may evolve not in bursts of speed, but in steady endurance. A brain shaped by pressure might think not in quick flashes, but in layered harmonies. Each thought dense, deliberate, and enduring, capable of holding complexity far longer than the brief impulses of surface minds. In the water, intelligence gains another advantage: freedom from gravity's tyranny. Land animals are bound to surfaces. Their movement is constrained to two dimensions. But aquatic creatures exist in true three-dimensional space. For them, up and down are as natural as forward and back. Predators may strike from below, prey may dart upward into the dark, and navigation becomes a symphony of vertical and horizontal awareness. Imagine a mind evolved in this context. Its very perception of the world would be richer, more spatial, more fluid. Such beings would not think in the flat maps and rigid boundaries that dominate human thought, but in flowing geometries, in layered currents, in movements that spiral and fold upon themselves like tides. What we consider advanced mathematics might be for them the natural rhythm of perception. But perhaps the most fascinating possibility is not individual intelligence, but collective. What if the deep has taught evolution that survival lies not in solitary minds, but in shared ones? Coral reefs are already cooperative structures, cities built by countless tiny organisms working as one. Slime molds on land show us how individual cells can merge into temporary collectives with surprising problem-solving abilities. In the ocean, bioluminescent plankton gather in vast clouds, responding as if moved by a single will. Could intelligence itself emerge from such collectives? Imagine ecosystems that think, communities of organisms whose neural signals intertwine until they form a consciousness larger than any single body. Such intelligence might not reside in a head or a brain, but in the very network of life itself, a mind distributed across miles of sea floor, a consciousness breathing through many bodies at once. The metabolic conditions of the deep may even favor such complexity. Cold, high-pressure environments slow biological processes, reducing the noise of random fluctuations and allowing intricate systems to stabilize. A distributed brain made of countless living nodes might struggle in the chaos of warm, shallow seas, but in the stillness of the abyss it could endure, humming softly across centuries. Where humans rely on the lightning speed of neurons firing across fragile brains, a deep-sea intelligence might rely on patience, density, and persistence, qualities that allow thought to accumulate like layers of sediment, building over time into something vast and profound. If such beings exist, their technologies would not resemble ours. They would not hammer metal or kindle fire. Those tools are meaningless underwater. Instead, they might shape life itself as their medium. Imagine organisms engineered to function as tools, shells bred to serve as amplifiers for sound, algae designed to emit bioluminescent codes, living machines grown from coral and bacteria. Their computers might not be silicon chips, but webs of neural tissue, cultivated across colonies of symbiotic creatures, pulsing with thought in the rhythm of tides. Power could be drawn from pressure gradients, from the endless motion of currents, or from the raw heat of hydrothermal vents. Their architecture might not rise in rigid towers, but grow organically, living cities that expand, repair, and adapt like reefs. Biological metropolises glowing faintly in the eternal dark. Speculation, yes, but grounded speculation. For nature already provides the templates. Bioluminescent bacteria communicate in dazzling displays, not unlike fiber optics. Squid control chromatophores across their skin with astonishing precision, forming instant patterns and signals. Corals grow into intricate architectures rivaling our own buildings. Electrical fish generate fields strong enough to sense and communicate through pulses. Each of these is a hint, a fragment of possibility. Put them together, extend them through time and adaptation, and suddenly the idea of a deep-sea civilization is not fantasy, but an extension of what life already does. We must also consider psychology. What would it mean to think in an environment where sound carries for thousands of miles, where light is precious and rare, where pressure is omnipresent and time stretches endlessly? Such minds would not be hurried. They would not rush. They might perceive the world as a slow unfolding, valuing depth over speed, connection over individuality. Their wisdom could be alien not because it is unintelligible, but because it has been sculpted by forces we have never endured. To speak to such beings would not be to exchange words, but to immerse ourselves in currents of thought as patient as tides. The idea seems vast, almost overwhelming, but the ocean itself teaches us vastness. It reminds us that life finds ways to endure where we least expect it. Intelligence may not be the exception, but the rule, arising wherever conditions allow complexity to deepen and endure. The surface world gave rise to us. The deep might have given rise to something else, something quieter, older, stranger, but no less intelligent. The more we study intelligence in Earth's oceans, the more we realize that consciousness might not need air to breathe. It might only need time, pressure, and the infinite patience of the deep. What if the signs have been there all along, hiding in plain sight beneath miles of water? For centuries we've gazed into the heavens, searching for proof of other minds among the stars, while perhaps the clues have been rising from below, faint signals in the dark, strange whispers in the currents, fragments of mysteries that never quite fit the story we tell ourselves about an empty ocean. Consider first the sounds. The ocean is not silent, it is alive with voices. Whales sing, icebergs groan, tectonic plates crack and shift. Yet buried within this symphony are notes that defy explanation. In 1997, hydrophones stationed thousands of miles apart picked up a sound so loud it dwarfed the calls of the largest whales. It rose in frequency, a strange upward sweep unlike anything ever recorded. Scientists dubbed it the bloop. At first, speculation ran wild. Was it an unknown leviathan, a geological upheaval, or something else entirely? The official explanation eventually leaned toward icebergs fracturing, but the truth remains unsettled. Icebergs do not migrate in coordinated patterns of sound. They do not mimic the qualities of biological calls with such uncanny precision. The bloop was not alone either. Other unidentified sounds, Julia, train, whistle, have been catalogued, anomalies in the ocean's great archive of noise. Each one is a thread dangling from the tapestry of the unknown. Acoustic mysteries do not stand alone. Submariners have long reported sonar readings that make no sense, massive objects that appear for moments before vanishing, shapes too large and too fast to match any known species. Sometimes sonar reveals schools of fish migrating with impossible coordination, forming patterns that ripple across hundreds of miles as if directed by a single will. Fishermen and naval crews alike have told of false bottoms, sonar images that suggest vast layers of something alive, only to dissolve when approached. Could these be natural formations of life, or something more structured, perhaps engineered, perhaps organized? Then there are the anomalies in magnetism. Ocean trenches have long puzzled researchers with readings that deviate from expectation. Compass needles drift strangely near certain abyssal planes. Instruments aboard survey vessels detect fluctuations that resemble the signatures of massive metallic structures, yet nothing visible explains them. Some suggest deposits of magnetized rock, the scars of volcanic activity. But what if those readings are something else entirely? Resonances from technologies designed to manipulate the very fields of Earth itself, hidden deep below where no satellite can pry. Even the seafloor itself holds puzzles. Across the world's oceans lie formations so precise they look like ruins of lost civilizations. Near Japan's Yonaguni Island, divers discovered a series of massive stone steps and terraces plunging into the sea. Sharp angles, geometric patterns, perfect right angles, features that mimic human architecture. Officially, geology explains them as natural formations shaped by erosion, yet many who have seen them in person describe an order too precise, too intentional to dismiss. Elsewhere, in the Caribbean, vast symmetrical ridges and pathways stretch across the sand, looking for all the world like the remnants of ancient roads. Are these mere accidents of geology, or are they the fingerprints of intelligence etched into the deep? Life itself sometimes refuses to follow the rules we set for it. Deep-sea creatures have appeared in places they should not exist. Giant squid, once thought confined to the blackest waters, have been found drifting unexpectedly near the surface. Strange fish from the Hadal trenches occasionally wash up on beaches after earthquakes, as if shaken loose from their hidden homes. There are records of luminous organisms appearing en masse, lighting up square miles of ocean in patterns too organized to be random. To the eye of a casual observer, they may look like nothing more than natural gatherings. To another, they might look like signals, messages scrawled in light across the canvas of the sea. Even temperature, one of the ocean's most stable features, has its oddities. In places that should be locked in freezing darkness, sensors detect warm patches, localized zones of heat that cannot be fully explained by hydrothermal vents or volcanic activity. These warm spots appear and vanish, migrating across the seafloor as though they follow some design. Heat is energy, and energy is power. Could it be that we are not witnessing geological quirks, but the byproducts of systems designed to harness the ocean's own forces? Patterns emerge when these mysteries are placed side by side. A strange sound here, a geometric formation there, an unexplained migration unfolding across a vast horizon. All may seem trivial in isolation, but when woven together, they begin to suggest a story. Like detectives in a case too vast to see in full, we start to notice consistencies, patterns, echoes of intention. Science often explains them away as coincidence or natural phenomena, and perhaps many are. But what if some are not? What if a hidden intelligence has learned the art of invisibility, not by erasing its presence, but by blending so seamlessly with the ocean's own systems that we cannot tell where nature ends and design begins? Imagine a civilization so advanced it does not build in defiance of its environment, but in harmony with it. To us, technology means cities of steel, blazing lights, smoke, and signals. To them, technology might mean reshaping currents, guiding migrations, or cultivating vast living structures indistinguishable from coral reefs. Their architecture would not jut upward but flow outward, blending into the seabed. Their energy would not scar the landscape but circulate through it, leaving only the faintest traces, warm spots, magnetic whispers, patterns too subtle for us to recognize unless we look with new eyes. The possibility is unsettling because it suggests we may already have been looking at their work without realizing it. We may have sailed over their cities, recorded their signals, and even mistaken their engineered ecosystems for natural ones. Our ignorance would not be proof of their absence, but proof of their success. To remain unseen is perhaps the greatest form of survival, especially when the watchers above remain blind to the language of the deep. Perhaps the most compelling evidence isn't what we've found, but what we haven't. In a realm where every discovery overturns our expectations, absence itself becomes a kind of presence. Imagine you've spent millions of years perfecting the art of living in harmony with your environment. Why would you reveal yourself to a species that has only just learned to swim? From our perspective, the ocean is still a frontier. We send submersibles like invaders, drilling and probing, mapping and mining, consuming what we find with little thought for the long term. For us, exploration is conquest, a declaration that to discover is to own. But for a civilization shaped by the patience of the abyss, survival would not mean domination. It would mean concealment, balance, an existence so entwined with its world that revealing itself to outsiders would feel less like triumph and more like a profound risk. Science fiction has long toyed with the concept of a prime directive, an ethical law that forbids advanced civilizations from interfering with less developed ones. It is a thought experiment born of our own fears. What if beings vastly older and wiser than us chose to step into our world? Would they help us or destroy us by accident, altering the fragile course of our growth? If such a directive were real, it would not be born of arrogance, but of experience. After all, interference is rarely neutral. A single technology, a single idea, introduced before its time, can warp the course of history forever. Perhaps the deep dwellers, if they exist, have learned this lesson intimately. The surest way to preserve their world is to let ours stumble through its own mistakes. From their perspective, we are not yet ready for contact. We burn forests, poison rivers, choke the air, and even turn the oceans themselves into dumping grounds. What wisdom could they hope to share without it being twisted into yet another weapon, another engine of consumption? Silence becomes not rejection, but restraint. Protection through invisibility is another possibility. If you can observe without being seen, you can learn everything without disrupting anything. To remain hidden is to remain safe. From our weapons, from our greed, from our misunderstanding. The ocean itself is their shield, a natural veil so complete that our technology struggles to penetrate it. Perhaps they use it deliberately, not only to survive, but to thrive undetected. Like deep-sea creatures whose camouflage is not color but invisibility itself, their greatest adaptation may be the art of silence. Time, too, plays its part. To us, decades are significant, centuries immense, millennia almost unimaginable. Yet in the deep, where change comes slowly and life endures under unbroken rhythms, time might flow differently. What seems like forever to us could be little more than an interlude for them. A civilization that has survived for millions of years would not be concerned with the urgency of surface dwellers still measuring their existence in mere thousands. Why intervene in such fleeting chaos? Better to wait. This raises another possibility. Perhaps they are waiting for us to mature. From their vantage point, we may look like adolescents, reckless with power, brilliant yet unstable. They have no need to rush into contact with a civilization so fragile it could destroy itself in the span of a few centuries. Why risk revealing their presence to those who cannot yet control their own impulses? They may be waiting not for our collapse, but for our evolution, for a time when we can approach them not as conquerors, but as equals. There is also the matter of resources. The surface world has always looked at the ocean as a vault to be plundered. We fish until populations collapse. We mine until ecosystems fracture. We drill until spills spread like black wounds across the waves. If an intelligent species inhabits the deep, then revealing themselves might invite competition of the most dangerous kind. We would see their technologies, their resources, their world, and we would want it. To remain hidden is to avoid conflict, to protect not only themselves, but the delicate balance of the realm they inhabit. For them, silence may be survival, not secrecy. Communication itself may be a barrier. How does one speak to beings who think in 3 dimensions, who sense through vibrations, magnetic fields, or chemical signals beyond our comprehension? Human language is rooted in breath and air, in sounds shaped by lungs and mouths. But in the abyss, there is no air to carry syllables. Instead, meaning might ripple through currents, or pulse in flashes of bioluminescence, or resonate in frequencies far beyond our ears. Even if they chose to reveal themselves, how would they translate their perception of reality into forms we could grasp? To them, our languages might appear primitive scratches and crude noises, no more communicative than the grunts of animals. The silence may not be deliberate at all. It may simply be the result of a gulf too vast to cross easily. But beyond practicalities lies philosophy. Imagine a civilization that has endured for eons without war, without pollution, without the endless cycles of destruction that define our history. Imagine a people who have built not on exploitation, but on harmony, who have learned to use their environment without exhausting it, to grow without consuming. Such beings would know the cost of balance, and they would recognize how easily it could be shattered. Would they risk their perfection by revealing themselves to us? Would they jeopardize a way of life honed over millions of years by engaging with a species that still struggles to live in peace with its own planet? To them, silence may be the highest wisdom, the discipline of restraint, the understanding that sometimes the most powerful action is none at all. Perhaps concealment, then, is not about superiority or fear. Perhaps it is about timing, waiting for the moment when two worlds can meet without one destroying the other. Let's imagine what technologies might flourish in a world without fire, without metals as we know them, but with unlimited time and the infinite creativity of life itself. On the surface, our civilizations rose on the back of fire. We smelted ore, forged steel, burned coal, split atoms. Our tools were carved from stone, beaten from metal, extracted from the crust like bones torn from the earth. But beneath the waves, none of that is possible. Fire sputters and dies, flames cannot breathe, metals corrode and dissolve in the brine. Down there, survival demands a different kind of ingenuity, an intelligence that does not shape the environment by force, but by coaxing it to grow, to bend, to become something new. Imagine a city not built but cultivated. Vast, coral-like structures rising from the seafloor, branching and arching into spirals of living architecture. These are not dead stones stacked into towers, but organisms carefully guided into form, like gardens sculpted over centuries. Walls breathe, floors flex, spires stretch upward in slow biological choreography. A dwelling is not a lifeless shell, but a companion, responsive, adaptive, even symbiotic. If the currents shift or tectonic tremors alter the seabed, the city itself bends and heals, repairing damage as effortlessly as skin closes around a wound. For communication, picture networks of bioluminescence stretching across entire ocean basins. Threads of glowing organisms pulsing in synchronized rhythm, transmitting meaning as waves of light cascade through the dark. Where we laid wires, they might seed living strands of luminous algae, each one a node in a vast oceanic web. The language of this network would not be binary pulses of electricity, but shifting constellations of color, rippling through the water like auroras beneath the waves. Messages could travel faster than the eye can track, painting entire canyons in shifting blues and greens, glowing symphonies of thought and intention. Energy, too, would take on forms unimaginable to us. We split atoms and burn fossil fuels, but in the abyss, the deep civilization might harness forces far more primal. Pressure itself, the crushing weight of billions of tons of water, could be channeled, stored, released. The grinding friction of tectonic plates, the constant simmer of volcanic ridges, the boiling breath of hydrothermal vents, all of these might be tapped as sources of power. Their world is one of extremes. Heat so fierce it could melt rock beside cold so absolute it halts all motion. Between those poles lies energy enough to fuel an eternity. Imagine reactors that do not explode, but breathe. Fields of engineered organisms clustered around vents, harvesting chemical gradients and transforming them into usable power, just as bacteria on Earth already do in their tiny, astonishing way. Transportation might not involve machines of metal and fuel, but symbiotic partnerships with sea life itself. Beings who have mastered the art of biological engineering could ride creatures bred for speed, for endurance, for navigation. Perhaps they do not invent submarines, but companions, living vessels capable of carrying many, shaped over generations until they are as much a part of the civilization as horses once were to us. Or perhaps they glide in pressure-driven chambers, fluid-filled spheres that adjust density with precision, allowing them to ascend and descend without harm. Technology and biology would be indistinguishable, a seamless blending of engineered life and natural adaptation. Manufacturing, too, would not involve smoke or sparks. Instead, mastery over chemistry would reign supreme. The ocean is a cauldron of elements, salts, and minerals suspended in infinite supply. What we see as corrosion, they might see as opportunity. Where we dissolve, they assemble. Materials could be coaxed into form at a molecular level, crystalline lattices shaped under pressure to be harder than steel, lighter than aluminum, more flexible than any polymer. Imagine a culture where crafting a tool means summoning it into existence through chemical currents, guiding minerals to precipitate in exact designs, shaping function as naturally as coral polyps build reefs. Their cities would not sprawl flat upon the ground, but extend in every direction. In 3 dimensions, civilization could rise like living galaxies, towers spiraling upward, chambers suspended mid-water, bridges of translucent tissue connecting habitats that glow like constellations adrift in blackness. The seafloor would blaze with slow constellations, radiant in blues, purples, and silvers, until from above they appeared like whole galaxies drifting silently in liquid space. Consider agriculture. Fields of crops would make no sense in a realm of shifting currents and eternal darkness. Instead, they might cultivate hydrothermal vents, domesticating entire ecosystems. These vents are chemical forges, releasing minerals that bacteria and tube worms already exploit to form the base of alien food webs. What if a civilization learned not only to harvest these vents but to engineer them, redirecting flows, adjusting temperatures, regulating output as if tending a farm? Imagine rows of vent chimneys arranged in perfect circles, glowing with mineral-rich plumes, each one a carefully managed resource of heat and nourishment. Water itself, seemingly abundant, yet often unfit for direct consumption, might be mastered in ways beyond our imagination. Their filtration systems could use living membranes, bioengineered tissues capable of stripping toxins, salt, and pollutants with no waste and no energy cost. Entire communities might thrive on currents purified by vast living filters, woven like invisible nets across trenches. Such systems would not degrade or rust, but repair themselves, grow stronger with time, adapting to changes in ocean chemistry with living resilience. The very materials of their world could surpass our strongest inventions. Imagine calcium carbonate composites drawn from shells and coral, reinforced at the molecular level until they exceed the tensile strength of steel. Picture flexible structures, like cartilage, capable of absorbing immense pressure without cracking. Envision transparent surfaces not made of brittle glass, but of biogenic materials, able to bend light itself, amplifying or concealing, creating illusions as much as windows. Their walls might shift from opaque to translucent with a thought, manipulating the very physics of light and sound in ways our laboratories have only begun to explore. The result is a civilization where technology breathes, grows, heals, and glows. Machines do not rust because machines are alive. Cities are not inert but pulse with vitality, woven into ecosystems rather than imposed upon them. Energy is not extracted violently, but coaxed gently, harvested from gradients and flows already abundant in the deep. Their society would be invisible not because it is absent, but because it is integrated, so seamlessly woven into the ocean that to us it looks like part of the natural order. Now close your eyes and imagine drifting through such a city. The water around you hums with faint vibrations, the echoes of pressure-driven engines hidden within the seabed. Spirals of coral architecture glow faintly, veins of bioluminescence pulsing like the heartbeat of the metropolis. Schools of engineered creatures dart above, each one glowing with signals invisible to human sight, carrying messages from district to district. Towers rise in organic whirls, their surfaces rippling with membranes that breathe, while gardens of vent-fed organisms shimmer like forests of fire. It does not look built, it looks born, like the ocean itself decided to dream, and in dreaming, made civilization real. In this realm where life and technology have become indistinguishable, the boundaries between civilization and nature dissolve completely. To imagine the technologies of the abyss is one thing. To imagine the minds that wield them is another. What kind of consciousness would evolve in the endless twilight of the deep, in a place where every movement is resisted by water, where survival depends not on domination, but on adaptation? If their civilizations are woven seamlessly into the ocean, then their psychology must be as well. A mind shaped by the deep would not think in straight lines or flat planes. Where we draw maps across parchment and screens, they would dream in full volumes. Three-dimensional thinking would not be an intellectual feat, but an instinct. From the moment of birth, they would know how to navigate currents above, caverns below, tunnels through mountains of water. To them, the surface dweller's idea of a horizon would seem absurdly limited. Why stare at a single line when the world extends in every direction at once? Their mathematics, their art, their very sense of self would be sculpted by this perpetual immersion in fluid infinity. Imagine language itself unfolding not linearly, but as spheres of meaning. Thoughts layered atop thoughts like bubbles rising and merging into new forms. But perhaps identity itself would feel different in the abyss, where our species has prized the individual, the solitary hero, the singular genius. They may instead experience consciousness as collective. In an environment where survival depends on cooperation, information shared is survival extended. Bioluminescence offers more than beauty, it becomes a medium of community. Entire colonies could pulse with coordinated patterns of light, each flicker a word, each wave of glow a story. To live in such a society might mean never being entirely alone. Each mind is a note, but the true consciousness emerges as the symphony. Their perception of time, too, would diverge radically from ours. We measure hours by the sun's march across the sky, days by shadows lengthening and retreating. But in the deep, there is no sunrise, no sunset, only the eternal dark. Time must be felt differently. Perhaps their lives are measured by the slow rhythms of tides, the seasonal migrations of prey, the venting cycles of hydrothermal chimneys. Where we see minutes ticking by, they might perceive centuries as the slow pulse of a single breath. To such beings, patience would not be virtue, but instinct. Decisions could take years, strategies unfold over millennia, wars rendered pointless in a culture that sees conflict as a wave that always dissipates in time. Emotion itself might find form in bioluminescence. We frown, we smile, our voices crack or swell with feeling. But in their world, the body is a lantern. Rage could blaze as crimson pulses flashing in jagged bursts across a whole body. Love might shimmer as waves of violet drifting gently outward, enveloping companions in warm glow. Sadness might dim the lights to faint flickers, while joy bursts forth as cascades of dazzling patterns painting the water with radiance. In such a society, lies might be impossible. The body itself becomes a living canvas of truth. Imagine relationships, arguments, reconciliations unfolding not in words alone, but in entire landscapes of light blooming in the darkness. Memory, too, would be more than personal. Perhaps they carry it as living history, passed not through books or archives, but through biological continuity. Experience might be encoded chemically, transferred across generations as inherited patterns of thought. A child might not merely learn the past, but feel it, tasting in their veins the triumphs and tragedies of ancestors. Such continuity would collapse the distinction between past and present. Memory would not be abstract, but living, carried in the very fabric of being. In the crushing silence of the Hadal trenches, meditation might not be escape but survival. Pressure is constant, immense, absolute, 12,000 pounds per square inch or more. Yet within that weight, they may find tranquility, tuning themselves to the rhythm of the deep. Where humans sit cross-legged and breathe air to quiet their minds, these beings might use pressure as their anchor, finding peace in surrender to the immensity pressing down on them. Imagine thought itself becoming tidal, slow and profound, each idea a deep current flowing through the collective mind. Communication could span forms our species barely recognizes. Words of sound might be only one layer. Pressure waves, subtle but vast, could ripple across miles, carrying meaning embedded in their frequency. Chemical signals released like invisible smoke might tell stories of danger, of migration, of kinship, narratives etched into the very flavor of the water. Bioluminescence would supplement these, a visible language that paints meaning across the dark. For us, language is largely linear, but theirs might be simultaneous. A chemical signal conveying history, a pressure wave conveying urgency, light pulses conveying emotion, all woven into a single communication richer than anything we can imagine. To such a mind, patience and endurance would not be virtues, but the natural ground of consciousness. Where we live in restless acceleration, our machines faster each year, our attention spans shorter, the deep mind would know no haste. It would wait for currents to shift, for tectonic plates to grind, for ecosystems to bloom and fade. Time would be partner, not enemy. Theirs is a wisdom born of endurance, a psychology grounded in the knowledge that nothing worth building can be rushed when you live beneath pressures that could crush stone. Their senses themselves would extend far beyond our comprehension. Imagine echolocation so refined it creates sound pictures more detailed than sight. Vast acoustic landscapes etched in their minds with every click and pulse. Picture sensitivity to pressure so acute they can feel the ocean's moods, detecting storms forming thousands of miles away through the faintest tremors in the deep. Chemical awareness could allow them to taste history itself, detecting migrations that passed centuries before, decoding the memory of water like a book written in molecules. Magnetic fields, too, could be part of their perception. Where birds and turtles use magnetism to navigate across continents, deep beings might feel the Earth's invisible currents as vividly as we see color. Entire maps of the ocean would be inscribed not on parchment, but in the magnetic hum of the planet itself. Perhaps they hear it as music, tectonic plates grinding as bass tones, magnetic flux lines as melodies, the slow churning of Earth's molten core as a rhythm so steady it feels eternal. To live in such awareness is to inhabit a world where physics itself sings. What emerges from this is a psychology radically unlike our own. To think like the ocean is to think fluidly, to adapt without resistance, to dissolve the boundaries between self and environment. It is to exist as part of every tide, every current, every wave. Consciousness becomes less like a flame struggling against the dark and more like the dark itself, vast, enduring, patient, adaptive. What we call individuality might be to them a temporary eddy, meaningful only as part of the greater flow. Perhaps the greatest difference between surface minds and deep minds is not intelligence, but wisdom, the kind that comes from living in harmony with forces beyond imagination. To imagine minds as patient as the tides is already to step beyond our human limits. But what if such beings have not only lived within the deep, but endured there for millions of years? What if they are not a civilization born yesterday, but one that has carried its wisdom through the longest stretches of Earth's history, watching epochs rise and fall as calmly as we watch the passing of seasons? From their vantage in the abyss, they would have observed mass extinctions the way we might observe storms on the horizon. When fire from the sky ended the reign of the dinosaurs, when the planet itself convulsed with death, the ocean's deepest realms remained untouched. While surface ecosystems collapsed, they would have watched from below, mournful perhaps, but secure in their world of eternal pressure and darkness. Such cataclysms, which to us appear as absolute endings, might to them look like intervals, pauses in the great rhythm of Earth's song. They would have witnessed continents drifting as though they were clouds, slow-motion collisions sculpting mountains, opening seas, tearing supercontinents apart. Imagine minds who know Pangaea not as a theory in textbooks, but as a memory, who felt the deep tremors as land masses ground together and split apart again. The Himalayas to us are timeless, eternal. To them, they are fledgling ridges, new wrinkles on Earth's skin, still rising, still growing, still ephemeral. Mountain ranges that take millions of years to form would be seen as passing gestures. Oceans that open and close over epochs would be known as simple tides, their rhythm extending far beyond our comprehension. They would have observed ice ages advancing, glaciers swallowing continents, seas retreating and returning, the great breath of the planet inhaling and exhaling across geological time. Where our species measures climate shifts in centuries and panics at changes within decades, these beings would see the full arc of cycles, the great turning wheels of climate and current. They would remember the lost ecosystems of Earth, forests of giants that no longer exist, shallow seas filled with creatures whose bones now rest only as fossils. In their memory swim ammonites with coiled shells shining like spirals of stone, trilobites crawling across seabeds in carpets of chitin, creatures so strange they look alien to us, yet familiar to them. For while paleontologists labor to piece together fragments of the past, the deep civilization might carry those ecosystems within them still, preserved not in rocks, but in genetic archives coded into living organisms, unbroken chains of memory stretching back hundreds of millions of years. The ocean itself could be their library. Genetic material passed down and preserved in deep-sea creatures might be more than heredity. It might be record-keeping. To us, DNA is life's code. To them, it could be history itself. Imagine organisms engineered to preserve not only their own lineage, but the very memory of extinct worlds. Every genome a page, every living being a book, the ocean floor a library where no flame can burn and no time can erase. But history may not only be stored in genes. Bioluminescent rituals, dances of light carried across generations, could encode stories in shifting waves of color, whole sagas of survival, ancient battles with predators long extinct, alliances forged and dissolved, victories over hunger and catastrophe. These could live in ceremonies of light. Where humans tell stories around fire, they might have shared theirs in glowing spectacles beneath eternal night, each retelling weaving the memory deeper into collective identity. Technological knowledge itself could be preserved across millions of years, not in artifacts that corrode and crumble, but in living systems renewed continuously. Our tools decay, theirs would endure as long as they are cultivated. If an invention is grown rather than built, if it can reproduce and adapt, then knowledge need never vanish. A device that repairs itself, that reproduces when broken, that evolves with need, this is not a relic, it is a lineage. Their technology may not have a history of obsolescence, but one of evolution, each generation of tools refining itself without ever erasing its ancestry. Imagine scientific understanding that does not stretch back a few centuries, but hundreds of millions of years. They would know the rhythms of supervolcanoes, the cycles of magnetic pole reversals, the long beat of meteor impacts. They would understand planetary change not as catastrophe but as breath. They might even hold wisdom about survival through cosmic disasters, how to endure the ash-filled skies after impacts, the toxic seas of anoxic events, the frozen stillness of snowball Earth. For them, apocalypse is never the end. It is another page in the endless book. From such a perspective, what are we? To them, surface civilizations might appear like sparks, brilliant but fleeting, rising suddenly and vanishing just as quickly. Egypt, Rome, the Mayans, the empires of steel and silicon, all of them would pass before the deep mind's gaze like lightning strikes, dazzling for a moment against the horizon and then gone. Our fears of collapse, our boasts of eternity, would seem laughably brief to beings who have seen the earth itself remake its face again and again. Perhaps they would see us as fascinating, unpredictable, not as rivals, not even as successors, but as a curiosity, like a firefly flashing desperately in the night, unaware of how vast and patient the darkness around it truly is. In their wisdom, they might judge us not by our power, which they have seen rise and fall countless times before, but by our potential to endure. Do we learn from catastrophe as they have? Do we adapt? Or are we doomed to burn brightly and then vanish into the fossil record, another spark in the endless procession of sparks? Imagine the emotional weight of such memory, to carry within you not only your own life, not only your people's story, but the entire sweep of Earth's history. Each extinction a scar, each rebirth a lesson, each epoch another step in an endless journey. What kind of empathy would that create? What kind of caution? What kind of reverence for life, knowing how much has already been lost, how much has been remade, how fragile every surface kingdom truly is? It may be that in their vast memory, we are the newest chapter in Earth's story, perhaps the most interesting, certainly the most unpredictable. If such a civilization has watched the world's story unfold for millions of years, if they have seen extinctions come and go, oceans rise and fall, continents drift like shadows across the surface, then the question becomes not whether they exist, but how they might ever choose to reveal themselves. For a people whose wisdom is measured in tides, whose patience is longer than mountains last above the waves, first contact would not be an accident. It would be a choice, careful, deliberate, and perhaps born of necessity. Perhaps the first step would come not from curiosity, but from crisis. Imagine the oceans pushed beyond recovery, reefs bleached into bone, fisheries collapsed, currents destabilized by melting ice. A civilization bound so intimately to the deep could not ignore such collapse forever. If the seas falter, the world falters with them. It may be that they would reveal themselves not to conquer or to instruct, but to save the very environment that sustains both them and us. Their hand might appear not in dominance, but in healing, rising like a tide only when the balance is truly at risk of breaking forever. Such contact would almost certainly begin quietly, far from the eyes of the masses. Who better to approach than those already listening? The marine biologists, the deep-sea explorers, the researchers straining to understand mysteries of the abyss. Picture a lone research submersible drifting at depth, its crew suddenly confronted by light patterns pulsing across the dark, patterns too structured, too deliberate to be chance. Or imagine an expedition returning with samples of organisms that bear designs impossible to explain by evolution alone. Gifts left intentionally where curious hands would find them. The first dialogues would not take place in capitals or parliaments, but in the hushed, breathless conversations of scientists who realize that they are no longer studying life, but being studied in return. The gifts themselves might be strange beyond measure, Not weapons, not machines, but tools that blur the line between organism and artifact. A living membrane that filters water perfectly, no matter how poisoned. A crystalline organism that glows with patterns encoding information like a living book. A pressure-grown material harder than any alloy we know, offered not as trade, but as invitation to learn, to follow, to collaborate. To us, these would seem miracles. To them, they might be no more than small tokens, a way of showing what is possible without overwhelming us. But perhaps direct gifts are too abrupt. Perhaps the first contact would come in dreams. Imagine messages sent not through machines, but through the subconscious. Patterns of sound, of pressure, of electromagnetic hum woven into the brain's rhythms. A fisherman dreams of glowing beings in the water. A scientist hears voices in sleep urging her toward discovery. Artists awaken with visions of cities beneath the waves. At first, these dreams would be dismissed as imagination, coincidence, madness. But as more people share them, as the visions converge into shared stories too consistent to ignore, a new possibility emerges, that we are being spoken to not in words, but in the universal language of mind itself. Or perhaps their first message would be written across the ocean itself. Phenomena so vast, so undeniable, that the world must take notice. Imagine entire stretches of sea glowing with patterns visible from space, an unearthly lattice of light spanning hundreds of miles, picture currents shifting in perfect symmetry, whirlpools forming not as chaos, but as intricate spirals like calligraphy across the waves. Or consider the sudden silence of whale song across an entire ocean, replaced by a single coordinated chorus, as though every cetacean had become an instrument in a message composed not for themselves, but for us. Even more dramatic would be intervention. A ship caught in a storm might find itself mysteriously guided to safety, unseen hands calming waves or steering currents. A submersible trapped in the crushing dark could be freed by beings that emerge silently from the black, vanishing before the crew can comprehend what saved them. Entire disasters might be averted without explanation. Oil spills dispersed overnight, volcanic eruptions redirected harmlessly into the deep, fisheries replenished seemingly by miracle. To us, these would be wonders. To them, perhaps only acts of stewardship, the simplest expression of their responsibility to the oceans they guard. At some point, subtlety might give way to collaboration. Knowledge might leak into human science in ways that appear almost accidental, a breakthrough in renewable energy that arrives from an inexplicable insight, a medical discovery based on marine biology that seems far ahead of its time, a new method of communication inspired by no known precedent. Researchers might believe these advances their own, never realizing they were guided, nudged, whispered to by minds far older and wiser than their own. The world would move forward without panic, believing it had advanced by its own genius, never realizing it was being quietly taught. But when the moment of true contact arrives, it would be a delicate dance. Too sudden, and panic spreads. Too forceful, and suspicion curdles into hostility. They would have to introduce themselves gently, gradually, with careful attention to the fragile fabric of human society. Consider the complexity. Billions of people divided by language, culture, politics, belief. Some would see them as gods, others as devils, still others as invaders. A misstep could fracture not only our trust, but our world itself. They would know this, and so they would move like tides, slow, inevitable, yet soft enough not to shatter the shores they touch. They would need cultural sensitivity, an understanding of our myths, our fears, our longing. Perhaps that is why they have remained hidden so long, not because they are indifferent, but because they are watching, studying, learning what we can accept and what we cannot. Before approaching the whole of humanity, they might begin with individuals, dreamers, poets, explorers, those most open to wonder. Through them, They could practice the art of communication, shaping bridges of trust before crossing into the full glare of human attention. Technological integration would need to be careful as well. To hand us the sum of their science would be like giving fire to children. Instead, they might choose gifts scaled to our level, advances we can understand and build upon without destroying ourselves. Imagine energy sources that clean the seas rather than poison them, tools that repair ecosystems rather than strip them, medicines that heal without exploiting. Each offering would not simply be a gift, but a lesson designed to guide us into maturity without overwhelming us. The partnership would begin, inevitably, with the oceans, for what else could unite us more directly than the water that sustains life itself? Imagine working side by side, our machines mapping, their minds guiding, our divers exploring, their emissaries teaching, our scientists analyzing, their wisdom providing context measured in millions of years. The first collaboration would not be about conquest or commerce, but survival. A joint effort to heal the seas, to restore balance before it is too late. Time itself would be one of the greatest challenges. For a species that measures plans in decades, speaking with a people who think in millennia would be bewildering. To them, waiting a century to see if humanity can change its ways might be no sacrifice at all. To us, it would feel unbearably slow. Contact would therefore require a translation of timescales, a way of aligning their patience with our urgency. Perhaps they would operate on both levels at once, subtle guidance unfolding across generations, alongside more immediate interventions to keep us from collapse. Before any of this, though, comes preparation. They would study us as carefully as we study the stars. They would observe not only our technologies, but our dreams and fears, our wars and art, our capacity for cruelty and our capacity for wonder. They would know our fragility, but also our resilience. They would understand that to reveal themselves is to risk everything they have preserved for millions of years. Such a step would not be taken lightly. It would come only when the scales tipped, when the moment arrived where two worlds might finally meet without destroying one another. Perhaps, in truth, that moment is closer than we think. If they have been watching, guiding, preparing, then perhaps their presence has already touched our story in ways we have never recognized. Not in thunderous revelations or fleets rising from the deep, but in whispers carried on tides, in nudges that change the course of human history without our knowing. Consider the earliest navigators who set out across vast oceans in fragile wooden vessels. Long before compasses, before charts, before even a clear understanding of currents, humans found their way across waters that should have swallowed them whole. Polynesian sailors crossed the Pacific, guided by instincts so precise that modern oceanographers still marvel at their accuracy. They read swells, stars, birds, and subtle shifts in the sea as if the ocean itself whispered to them. Was it simply human genius, or was something else at work? A quiet influence helping them survive journeys that should have been impossible? Maritime innovations often appeared in sudden leaps rather than gradual steps. The development of outriggers, sails, deep-keeled ships, magnetic navigation, all seem to burst into human knowledge at pivotal moments, as though ideas were seeded rather than discovered. Imagine a hidden hand offering inspiration at just the right time, ensuring that humanity's relationship with the ocean deepened in ways that would eventually prepare us for greater mysteries. There are stories, too, of rescues that defy explanation. Sailors cast overboard who awoke on shore with no memory of how they survived. Entire vessels found adrift with crews alive, but claiming strange lights guided them through storms. Folklore dismisses these as miracles, but what if they were not? What if from time to time beings of the deep intervened when the line between life and death was razor thin, not to save all, but to save just enough? Even the knowledge of currents possessed by ancient peoples with no maps raises questions. How did indigenous navigators know about gyres spanning thousands of miles? How did fishing communities understand seasonal flows of water that scientists only mapped in the last century? Oral traditions carry secrets, chants that encode oceanic rhythms, myths that describe the dance of currents with uncanny precision. Perhaps they were not only observing but being taught, guided by whispers from those who live where such knowledge is as natural as breathing. The sudden leaps of oceanographic understanding in our own era are no less curious. Why did humans begin probing the abyss when we had only just learned to reach the skies? Why have technologies for deep-sea exploration, submersibles, diving systems, sonar, developed so rapidly compared to other sciences? It is almost as though curiosity itself was being encouraged, as if the idea of descending into the deep was planted, nurtured, allowed to bloom before we were ready to use it fully. Even our conservation movements bear the signature of hidden influence. The sudden rise of organizations devoted to saving whales, protecting reefs, healing oceans. These did not emerge from nowhere, yet their timing feels uncanny, as though humanity was prompted at the very moment the seas most desperately needed allies. Environmentalists speak often of callings, of feeling summoned to protect waters they cannot fully understand. What if those callings are not merely internal? What if they are invitations, subtle signals placed within human minds to draw us closer to stewardship rather than exploitation? Across our myths and religions, the ocean is rarely absent. Every culture that touches the sea speaks of beings that dwell beneath, gods, guardians, spirits, tricksters. From Poseidon's trident to Yamaya's embrace, from the Norse Ran who gathers the drowned to the water mothers of African traditions, the idea of powerful intelligences beneath the waves runs like a current through human imagination. These deities are not merely figures of worship. Many encode practical knowledge. Stories of mermaids guiding sailors often point towards safe harbors or warn of storms. Legends of sea kings often coincide with regions of treacherous current or hidden reefs. Myths, in this sense, may be more than symbolic. They may be fragments of memory, echoes of real encounters reshaped into stories we could carry forward. Mermaid tales appear everywhere across continents and centuries, told by peoples who never met one another. Some describe them as seductive dangers, others as benevolent rescuers, still others as teachers. The universality is striking. Could it be that different cultures were experiencing glimpses of the same hidden civilization and each translated those encounters into their own symbolic language? What we call myth may be the distorted memory of first contact in miniature, repeated again and again, never quite recognized for what it was. Even the great flood myths, Noah, Utnapishtim, Deucalion, Manu, speak not only of disaster, but of survival, of guidance that comes when waters rise to swallow the land. Perhaps these are not merely allegories for morality or renewal. Perhaps they are cultural memories of real sea level changes, events observed and remembered not only by humans, but by watchers in the deep. To them, floods and ice ages are nothing new. They are cycles. To us, they are catastrophes. Myths may preserve not only human memory, but the lessons shared by those who have endured countless such shifts before. Atlantis, too, lingers as an enduring echo. Across unconnected cultures, we find stories of drowned cities, shining civilizations swallowed by the sea. Whether named Atlantis, Mu, or something else, the pattern persists. Could these be distorted memories of glimpsed undersea realms? If a civilization has existed beneath the waves for millions of years, would it not occasionally brush against the surface, leaving impressions so powerful they became legends? Perhaps the guidance we imagine as myth has always been more practical, more deliberate. A fisherman dreams of where to cast his nets and finds abundance waiting. A shipwright has a sudden idea that revolutionizes design. An explorer feels compelled to push farther, to risk more, and discovers a new world. Scientists speak of flashes of insight, moments when solutions appear fully formed. What if some of these are not random sparks, but planted seeds? What if our greatest leaps were collaborations all along, invisible partnerships where the deep provided the spark and the surface carried it forward? Such a theory paints history as less solitary than we believe. It suggests we have never been entirely alone in our relationship with the sea. We have been students guided by unseen teachers, nudged toward curiosity, survival, and eventually responsibility. Not controlled, never forced, but inspired, as though ideas themselves were the bridge between our species and theirs. To consider this is to reframe everything we think we know. Our myths are not mere fictions, they are encrypted messages. Our innovations are not isolated brilliance, they may be whispers answered. Our survival across millennia of storms and floods may not be chance. It may be the result of subtle hands guiding us just enough, never so much that we would see the hand itself. Such a theory is not proof. It cannot be measured in equations or tested in laboratories, but it asks us to look at history with new eyes, to wonder if the inexplicable moments, the sudden leaps, the shared myths are not accidents at all, but evidence of a deeper relationship. A relationship waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be brought into the light. If so, then perhaps everything up to now has been preparation. The stories, the myths, the sudden insights, they are not the main event but the groundwork, a foundation laid stone by stone beneath the waves of our consciousness. Perhaps what comes next is not the planting of ideas, but the moment when the teachers finally step forward and reveal themselves openly, no longer content to whisper, but ready to speak. If whispers from the deep have guided us across the surface of this world, then perhaps the guidance itself is only a fragment of something larger. For as vast and mysterious as Earth's oceans are, they may not be unique. Across the solar system, and perhaps across the galaxy, there are other oceans, hidden beneath ice, sealed beneath clouds, scattered through the dark like stars. To imagine our oceans in isolation is to underestimate water itself, the most patient and pervasive force in the universe. Take Europa, a moon of Jupiter. Beneath its cracked shell of ice, scientists believe there lies an ocean containing twice as much water as all the seas of Earth combined. Imagine it, a world where liquid stretches farther than any ship could sail, deeper than any trench on Earth. Sunlight never touches it, yet warmth rises from within, stirred by the gravitational pull of Jupiter's immense tides. To us, it is speculation. To a being that has thrived in Earth's abyss, it might look like home, or Enceladus, Saturn's shimmering pearl. Geysers shoot from its southern pole, spraying plumes of water vapor and organic molecules into space. Each eruption is a message, unintentional perhaps, but unmistakable. There is liquid below, and where there is liquid, there may be life. If intelligence can thrive in Earth's Hadal zones, where pressure would crush a submarine like paper, then why not in Enceladus's hidden seas? To the watchers of Earth's depths, these distant oceans would not seem alien at all. They would seem like cousins waiting to be discovered. Then there is Titan, Saturn's largest moon, where lakes of methane and ethane pool across a frozen surface. Here, chemistry takes forms we can barely imagine. It is not water that flows, but hydrocarbons, not oceans as we know them, but seas of liquid gas. What forms of thought could arise in such a place? Minds shaped not by oxygen and carbon dioxide, but by methane and nitrogen. To us, such chemistry feels inhospitable. To another intelligence, it might be paradise. The possibilities grow stranger still. Deep within Neptune, pressure may crush carbon into seas of liquid diamond. Imagine a civilization born not in salt water, but in oceans of shimmering crystal, their technology sculpted from the very diamonds they swim within. What would such beings look like? Minds evolved in brilliance and fracture, living in a sea of hardness flowing like liquid glass. Such a world challenges our imagination, yet physics suggests it could exist. Even between the stars, the ocean waits. Interstellar comets carry frozen water, carbon compounds, the building blocks of life itself. Rogue planets, cast adrift without suns, may harbour subsurface oceans kept liquid by geothermal heat. In the darkness between galaxies, seas may stretch under alien skies, untouched by starlight yet teeming with potential. The universe may be less a desert than we assume, and more an archipelago of oceans, scattered and waiting. This vision leads to a profound idea, the ocean-universe theory. Water is not rare. It is, in fact, the most common solvent for life we know. If intelligence can rise from liquid seas once, it can rise again. If it can rise here, it can rise everywhere, not on sunlit plains or in burning deserts, but in hidden oceans beneath ice and stone. Perhaps the galaxy is not ruled by spacefaring civilizations of fire and metal, but by oceanic minds, deep-dwelling, patient, enduring. Imagine such civilizations finding one another. They would not fling ships across the stars, but send signals through the medium they understand best. Pressure waves, chemical codes, light pulsing in sequences like bioluminescence carried across space. Communication networks might stretch from Europa to Enceladus, from Titan to Earth, from rogue planets to comets passing between systems. To us, space looks empty. To them, it might be filled with messages swimming through the void, encoded in forms we do not yet recognize. If this is true, then Earth's oceans are not isolated at all. They are part of a larger conversation, a single verse in a chorus that spans galaxies. Perhaps our hidden neighbors in the abyss are not alone, but already in communion with minds we cannot yet imagine. To them, first contact with humans would not be an introduction to the stockings of community, but an extension of one that has existed for eons. Meeting us would not be the first step, but the next step. Such a possibility reframes our place in the cosmos. We often imagine joining a federation of stars, civilizations that burn fire into rockets and conquer distance with speed. But what if the true galactic community dwells in darkness, in pressure, in patience? What if the language of intelligence is not forged in flames, but whispered in water? We might find ourselves not the pioneers of exploration, but the apprentices of an ancient order, one that values depth over height, endurance over conquest. Consider the philosophical weight of this. Intelligence, we assume, craves light, sky, and expansion. But what if the universe favors those who choose the opposite path, who thrive in shadow, who find wisdom not in speed but in slowness, not in expansion but in harmony? If life prefers the depths to the surface, then our obsession with reaching the stars may be less significant than our ability to understand the ocean. Perhaps our true initiation into the cosmos is not through spaceflight, but through learning to think like the deep. To stand on a beach and stare at the horizon is to look outward. To imagine the galaxies above is to dream upward. Yet the true connection, the one that ties us to other worlds, may lie downward. Every trench on Earth might be an embassy, every vent a message, every strange bioluminescent pulse a reminder that communication need not wait until we reach the stars. It may already be happening below our feet in a language we have yet to decipher. Picture it, a network of civilizations scattered across the galaxy, each dwelling beneath the skin of their world. They do not build towers but cathedrals of living coral. They do not send fire into the sky but send signals through the deep. They do not rush for they have time. They do not conquer for they have no need. Their wisdom is measured not in conquests but in endurance. To them, survival is not a struggle but an art perfected over eons. If our hidden neighbors beneath the waves are part of this network, then the stakes of discovery grow even greater. We are not merely encountering one civilization. We are being introduced to a chorus, to a council, to a community that spans worlds. To be invited into such a network would be to find that we are not only not alone, we are the newest members of a family older than stars. What would such an introduction feel like? Not a thunderous arrival, but a gentle ripple, a message carried through tides, revealing not dominance, but welcome. Perhaps we will not hear a voice but feel a resonance, like the ocean itself speaking for the first time. Perhaps the message will be simple, that we were never alone, that the universe itself is an ocean, and that every drop of water, every tide, every wave connects us to a vast and hidden whole. If so, then the story of humanity changes forever. Our search for extraterrestrials, our radio telescopes pointed to the sky, may have been looking in the wrong direction. The answer may come not from above but from below, from oceans under ice, from seas without sunlight, from neighbors who have been speaking all along. Perhaps the greatest revelation of all will not be that we found them, but that they found us long ago and have been waiting patiently for us to learn how to listen. If the universe itself is threaded with oceans, then perhaps our own is not only a cradle of life, but also a responsibility. For while we dream of cosmic neighbors, our blue planet faces wounds of our own making, wounds that deepen with every tide. To imagine collaboration with a hidden civilization is not only to picture awe and wonder, but also to consider healing. For what greater test of partnership could there be than to save the waters we both call home? The crisis is no longer abstract. Plastic drifts across every current, binding into gyres that grow larger than nations. Entire reefs of synthetic waste form, strange new environments where fish dart between bottles and turtles tangle in nets. What we once discarded has become architecture, a testament not to ingenuity, but to neglect. These artificial reefs carry poisons into the deep, reshaping ecosystems in ways we barely comprehend. Ocean acidification alters the very chemistry of life. As carbon dioxide dissolves into the sea, shells weaken, corals dissolve, and plankton, the invisible foundation of the food chain, struggle to survive. It is as if we are rewriting the script of life without understanding the language we are changing. What took millions of years to balance, we are unraveling in a handful of decades. Rising temperatures drive migrations on a scale both immense and invisible. Fish abandon ancient routes, whales shift their journeys, coral reefs expel the algae that give them color and life. What once was stable is now restless. The maps of the ocean are being redrawn in real time, not by tectonic forces but by our emissions. Entire ecosystems move northward or vanish altogether, leaving silence in their wake. Overfishing tears apart webs of balance. Species that once numbered in the billions collapse to fractions of their former abundance. Nets stretch wide, scraping the ocean floor, leaving scars across habitats older than civilization itself. Ancient practices of balance give way to industrial hunger, and the ocean's voice grows quieter each year. Chemical runoff creates dead zones, vast stretches where oxygen vanishes and nothing can live. Fertilizers pour from rivers, feeding blooms that consume life instead of nurturing it. From above, the ocean looks alive. Below, it is deserts expanding in all directions. Even the smallest particles betray us. Microplastics drift everywhere, lodged in plankton, inhaled by fish, rising into the bellies of seabirds, and ultimately into us. The ocean's bloodstream carries our fingerprints now, down to the cellular level. Perhaps the most haunting wound is coral bleaching. Reefs, the rainforests of the sea, once vibrant cities of colour and motion, fade into skeletal silence. Bleached white, they stand like ghostly ruins, reminders of what once was. Each lost reef is not only a collapse of beauty, but a collapse of homes. Homes for fish, for crustaceans, for countless species that depend on them. Against this backdrop, the possibility of partnership with an ancient ocean civilization becomes not merely fascinating but urgent. What wisdom might they carry, honed over millions of years of harmony that could help us restore what we have damaged? What tools, what understandings might they offer if we proved ourselves ready to listen? Imagine biological systems designed to undo our errors. Living organisms that consume plastic and transform it into harmless compounds. Not crude machines grinding waste into smaller fragments, but elegant biotechnologies that dissolve plastic into its elemental parts, returning it to the cycle of life. To us, this would be miracle. To them, it might be elementary housekeeping. Carbon sequestration, too, might take on new forms. Deep-sea processes already lock carbon into stone, sediments, and vents. What if they had learned to accelerate these systems, guiding currents to carry carbon into safe repositories for millennia? Instead of building factories to trap emissions, we might learn to collaborate with natural systems that know this work far better than we ever could. Ecosystem restoration might not mean forcing life back, but guiding it forward. Through subtle nudges of evolution, species could adapt to warming waters, acidifying seas, shifting habitats. Not unnatural manipulation, but careful stewardship, helping life leap where it would otherwise falter. They might show us how to coax resilience from fragility, turning collapse into transformation. Even water purification could take forms beyond our imagining. Natural filtration systems already cleanse countless gallons each day, from mangroves to sponges. Scaled to planetary levels, such systems could restore clarity to waters choked with toxins. Rather than chemical plants and sprawling infrastructure, the ocean itself might be the filter, engineered not with steel, but with symbiosis. Fishing could shift from extraction to partnership. Practices designed not to deplete, but to enhance populations, harvesting only what strengthens balance. Perhaps schools could be guided, herds replenished, cycles restored. Instead of hunting the ocean as adversary, we might learn to cultivate it as ally, guided by those who have always lived within its rhythms. Even climate regulation could take new forms. Ocean currents drive the planet's temperatures, yet they shift in ways we do not fully understand. What if they could be subtly influenced, redirected, balanced to soften extremes? Not domination of climate, but tuning it, as one tunes an instrument to restore harmony rather than discord. Then there are the questions of resources. Our hunger reaches even into the deep, with plans for mining rare metals from vents and nodules. Such actions risk tearing apart habitats before we even understand them. But what if alternatives exist? Methods of obtaining what we need without destruction. Perhaps they could teach us to extract without scarring, to harvest without collapse. The true miracle, though, would not be the technologies themselves, but the paradigm they embody. For we often imagine technology as domination, as bending nature to our will. Yet the ocean teaches otherwise. Its power lies in balance, in cycles, in patience. A partnership with a deep civilization would not cast them as saviors swooping in to rescue us. It would mean collaboration, their ancient wisdom entwined with our restless innovation, their understanding of the abyss merged with our perspective of the surface. From them, we might learn that technology need not break from nature. It can flow with it, dance with it, echo its rhythms rather than fight them. Our tools could be less like machines and more like organisms, our cities less like walls and more like reefs. Perhaps their greatest lesson would not be a device or a system, but a way of seeing, that survival is not conquest, but cooperation. To embrace such a vision would be to redefine what progress means. Not infinite consumption, but infinite renewal, not racing ahead, but sinking deeper. Not domination of the planet, but partnership with it. In that vision, healing the ocean becomes more than repair. It becomes a rehearsal, a preparation for joining a wider community, not just of species, not just of planets, but of civilizations that have chosen endurance over collapse. To prove we are ready to join them, we must first prove we can heal our own waters. Perhaps that is the ultimate test, not whether we can reach the stars, but whether we can keep the seas alive. For if the ocean is the universal language of intelligence, then to speak it, we must first learn how to listen, how to heal, how to protect. Contact with an ocean civilization would not merely expand our knowledge, it would redefine us. The shock waves would not be limited to science or politics, not confined to laboratories or governments. They would ripple through every current of human existence, reshaping the very question of what it means to be human. The first shift would occur in consciousness. For so long, we have measured intelligence against the mirror of our own minds, language, logic, memory, creativity. Yet in the deep, another kind of intelligence thrives, one that does not look or think like us. Encountering it would force us to expand the definition of mind itself. We would come to understand that intelligence is not bound to air, not bound to bipedal bodies or spoken words. It may drift in schools, pulse in light, echo in waves, or spread across communities like a shared tide. To learn from them would mean learning to think in three true dimensions. Our lives are mapped across horizontal planes, roads, cities, borders. Even our language betrays it. We move forward, look back, rise above. But to live as they do is to exist in a world without fixed planes, where movement is not confined to surface and soil, but spirals through depth and openness. Such thinking could transform not only navigation, but philosophy, science, even the way we imagine possibilities. Their patience would challenge us most. For them, time may flow like tides, slow, cyclical, inevitable. Decisions measured not in hours or years, but in centuries. Their memories may stretch across epochs, their stories told in the language of tectonic drift and glacial melt. To learn from such a people would require shedding our addiction to immediacy, to urgency, to the belief that speed is progress. We might discover that endurance is wisdom, that patience is strength, that true vision means looking far beyond our own lifetimes. Consciousness itself might be reshaped by metaphors drawn from the sea. We could begin to see ourselves as eddies within a larger current, connected yet distinct. Individual identity would not dissolve, but it would no longer be seen as isolated. Collective consciousness, once the realm of metaphor, might become lived experience, our thoughts influenced by the awareness that we are never truly separate from the waters that cradle us. Even decision-making could shift under their influence. Pressure, a force we often resist, would become a principle to guide us. Flow, a concept we sometimes relegate to poetry, could become a model for governance and negotiation. Imagine politics that bends rather than breaks, economies that circulate rather than hoard, cultures that adapt rather than fracture. From such shifts would come a technological renaissance, unlike any we have known. No longer would technology be built in opposition to nature as walls, engines, and machines that extract and consume. Instead, we might learn to grow it. Biotechnology could replace much of what we hammer and weld. Materials might emerge that are alive, responsive, regenerative. Our buildings might become reefs, expanding with us, adapting to their surroundings. Cities might breathe, filter, and heal like ecosystems rather than devouring them. Energy itself could transform. Instead of burning fuel or splitting atoms, we might learn to harness the flows of our planet more gracefully: currents, gradients, pressure differentials. Power could come not from conquering, but from harmonizing. Transportation could cease to be rigid paths across asphalt and sky, becoming instead systems that flow as effortlessly as fish through water, guided by principles of minimal resistance and maximum grace. Communication, too, might change beyond recognition. Our current networks rely on wires, satellites, and devices. Theirs may use the environment itself: light, sound, chemistry, pressure. Imagine a language that fills not only the airwaves, but the water, the land, the very atmosphere. Imagine communication that envelops us, that allows participation rather than mere transmission. Medicine might finally see the body as an ecosystem, not a machine. Illness would not be treated as an enemy to destroy, but as imbalance to realign. Treatments could emerge that mirror the resilience of reefs or the regenerative power of kelp forests. The human body, mostly water, could be healed not by force but by guidance, taught to remember its balance rather than coerced into function. Such transformations would reach far beyond laboratories and clinics. Culture itself would be reborn. New art forms could emerge from the influence of bioluminescence. Imagine canvases that glow and shift, paintings that ripple like tides, sculptures that pulse with living light. The experience of art might no longer be static but immersive, a collaboration between creator, observer, and environment. Music would be forever changed. No longer limited to instruments and voices, it could incorporate currents, rhythms of waves, pulses of pressure. Composers might craft symphonies that echo the ocean's slow dance, songs that resonate with the deep's vast harmonics. Concert halls might flood not with water, but with soundscapes that place listeners inside the ocean's body. Literature would grow stranger, deeper. Stories might be told not in linear arcs but in spirals, branching flows, cycles that return changed with each turn. Themes of depth, pressure, and connection would enter our narratives, reshaping how we write and how we read. Philosophy, long grounded in dichotomies, light and dark, mind and body, freedom and necessity, might finally embrace fluidity. Instead of rigid categories, we might come to understand existence as shifting, interwoven, adaptive. A philosophy of flow could replace the philosophy of walls. Spirituality, too, would transform. No longer confined to heavens above or earth below, the sacred might be discovered in the depths themselves. Oceans would cease to be mere resources or metaphors and become temples, living presences that hold the memory of the world. Humanity might find its sense of the divine not in fire or sky, but in water, the element from which we all arose. Education would change most radically of all. No longer confined to classrooms and books, it might embrace immersion and experience. Children could learn science not from diagrams, but from swimming within models of ecosystems. History could be felt as well as read. Stories lived as simulations of tides and migrations. Knowledge would cease to be static and would become fluid, embodied, participatory. Such transformations would ripple inward, reshaping not only societies but selves. Knowing that we are not alone, that intelligence flourishes in forms utterly unlike our own, would end our long solitude. The fear that humanity is a cosmic accident would dissolve. We would understand ourselves as part of a larger conversation, one voice among countless others across worlds of water. We might begin to see our bodies differently, not as isolated vessels of flesh, but as currents of water temporarily given shape. Each of us, more than half ocean already, connected to every wave, every drop, every tide. The distinction between self and sea would blur, replaced by a recognition that we are continuous with the planet that sustains us. The implications reach even deeper. We would begin to grasp that intelligence is not rare, not fragile, not bound to our particular way of being. It is woven into the fabric of existence, arising wherever conditions allow, expressing itself in countless ways. The ocean would cease to be alien, it would become kin. To live with such knowledge would be to walk differently, to speak differently, to dream differently. We would see the world not as a resource to be used, but as a mind to be honored. Our choices would no longer be framed by scarcity, but by connection. Our lives would no longer be measured by what we take, but by what we nurture. Such is the promise of contact, not just new tools, not just new sciences, but a transformation of the human spirit, a chance to shed the illusion of isolation, to reimagine ourselves as beings of water, of flow, of patience, a chance to join not only a civilization beneath the waves, but a way of being that stretches from the first tide pools of Earth to the oceans of distant worlds. While we imagine and wonder, we can begin living as if this possibility were real, and perhaps, in doing so, make it more likely to become reality. The ocean has always been our mirror, reflecting both our curiosity and our fear. To prepare for the possibility of contact with intelligence beneath the waves, we must first prepare ourselves, not only with technology and institutions, but with humility, patience, and a willingness to listen. Personal preparation begins with respect. Every encounter with the sea becomes an opportunity to honor it, not as a backdrop or a playground, but as a living presence. To walk a shoreline, to dive into shallow reefs, to stand at the edge of a cliff overlooking endless blue. These are not casual experiences, but moments of communion with a world that may be far more alive, more aware than we have ever allowed ourselves to believe. Developing a deeper respect for ocean ecosystems is not simply an act of conservation, it is the first gesture of diplomacy. To live as if they exist means learning to stretch our minds across longer timescales. For centuries, human decisions have been measured in days, months, election cycles. Preparing for a civilization that thinks in centuries requires us to slow down, to widen our perspective until we can imagine outcomes beyond our own lifespans. The practice of long-term thinking becomes a form of empathy, a way of reaching across the gulf that separates surface impatience from deep-time patience. Observation, too, becomes a kind of discipline. The ocean is not quick to reveal its secrets. It requires patience, silence, and attention to patterns. The same skills that a marine biologist uses when watching a reef, staying still, noticing small changes, resisting the urge to impose conclusions, are the same skills we must cultivate as individuals. To prepare for intelligence in the deep, we must first become better listeners. Wonder is another form of readiness. To remain curious about the mysteries of the deep is to keep the door open. When we encounter strange lights in the water, unexplained currents, unfamiliar songs echoing through hydrophones, the easy response is dismissal. Wonder demands the harder response. What if this means something? What if this is a sign? Cultivating wonder prepares us for recognition when the extraordinary finally surfaces. On the practical side, support for marine conservation becomes a direct form of preparation. Every act that protects reefs, reduces plastic, restores mangroves, or shields migratory paths is also an act of respect for potential neighbors. If an intelligent ocean civilization does exist, what better message could we send than the proof that we are learning to care for the home we share? Conservation is not just about saving ecosystems. It is about showing we are capable of partnership. Personal study matters as well. Ocean science, marine biology, deep-sea ecology, these are not merely professional fields but pathways into intimacy with the sea. The more we learn, the more attuned we become to subtle signs. The amateur naturalist, the diver, the sailor, the child fascinated by tide pools, all are practicing forms of preparation. To know the sea is to open ourselves to conversation with it. There are inner practices too that mirror the ocean's wisdom. Meditation inspired by water, listening to the rhythm of waves, breathing with the tide, visualizing currents, becomes a way of aligning our minds with the deep. In mindfulness, we practice patience, presence, and flow, qualities that might make us more comprehensible to a species that thinks with the rhythm of tides rather than the tick of clocks. Community itself can become a rehearsal space. Building circles of stewardship around oceans, local beach cleanups, community-supported marine reserves, cultural festivals honoring the sea creates networks of care. Such efforts are not symbolic, they are preparatory. If contact ever occurs, it will not be with isolated individuals but with a collective humanity. Communities that practice cooperation with the ocean now may become the first bridges across the divide. Beyond the personal lies the realm of collective readiness. Nations must learn to cooperate not only with each other, but with the planet itself. International agreements on ocean protection, already fragile, would need to be strengthened not just for ecological reasons, but as an act of diplomacy. To pollute the seas would no longer be merely environmental negligence. It would be the equivalent of defacing the home of another intelligent people. Investment in deep-sea exploration becomes essential. The abyssal plains, trenches, and mid-ocean ridges are still largely unmapped. Funding research into these unknowns is not just scientific curiosity, but preparation for dialogue. If we fail to explore, we fail to notice. The possibility of contact requires us to shine light, literal and metaphorical, into the darkness. At the same time, we must develop technologies for sustainable use of the ocean. Fishing practices, mining strategies, energy systems, all must evolve away from extraction and toward coexistence. If we approach the sea as a vault to be plundered, we disqualify ourselves as partners. If we approach it as a living system to collaborate with, we announce ourselves as potential equals. Law, too, must evolve. Already there are proposals for recognizing legal rights for rivers, forests, and ecosystems. Extending such recognition to the ocean as a whole could be a profound gesture. To grant the sea personhood, to enshrine its rights in law, would not only protect ecosystems, it would prepare us to recognize any intelligence within them as a fellow subject rather than an object. Cultural shifts are equally vital. Art, education, and ritual can help foster appreciation for marine ecosystems. Festivals honoring tides, music inspired by whale song, school curricula that teach children the rhythms of the ocean all prepare humanity for relationship. A culture that loves the sea will be better prepared to meet its inhabitants with reverence rather than fear. Even the mechanics of communication must be considered. What if contact comes? What signals would we use? How would we interpret theirs? Establishing preliminary communication protocols, however speculative, demonstrates readiness. Training scientists, linguists, and ethicists to consider contact scenarios ensures that if the moment arrives, we do not stumble blindly into misunderstanding. Yet there is a paradox at the heart of preparation. The very act of readying ourselves for contact, even if it never comes, makes us better. The disciplines of patience, conservation, cooperation, and humility are not wasted if no civilization exists beneath the waves. They are the very qualities we need to survive our own century. Preparing for the other makes us more fully ourselves. The question of ocean intelligence becomes less about them and more about us. How will we live? How will we act? How will we care for this blue planet? To live as if they exist is to transform the way we walk upon the earth. Every beach becomes sacred ground. Every dive becomes exploration of possible homes. Every choice about plastic, carbon, or waste becomes a gesture of respect or disrespect toward unseen neighbors. Preparing for contact is not about waiting for revelation, but about living differently now. In this sense, every tide carries possibility. Every wave that collapses on the shore is a messenger. Every deep current, invisible to us yet powerful enough to shape climates, may carry signals we have not yet learned to read. Standing at the ocean's edge becomes more than recreation, it becomes initiation. To listen is to prepare. To wonder is to participate. To care is to open the door. As we surface from this journey into possibility, we carry with us a transformed relationship with the vast blue mystery that covers our world. The ocean is no longer just water and salt, no longer just waves and tides. It has become a living question, a mirror of our imagination, and perhaps even a waiting presence. To stand before it now is to feel the weight of both wonder and responsibility. We have discovered that the ocean is Earth's greatest frontier, a place more alien to us than the surface of distant planets. Though it touches every shore, though it defines our climate, though it sustains our very breath, its depths remain largely untouched. It is the closest thing we have to another world, hidden in plain sight. We have glimpsed how intelligence might take forms we have never imagined. not bound by air or fire, not dependent on land or metal, but shaped by pressure, by darkness, by chemistry, and by patience. Minds that could think in 3 dimensions as easily as we think in lines of text. Minds that might merge and separate like currents, carrying memory across generations like whispers in the tide. Minds that express themselves not in words but in pulses of light, vibrations of sound, shifts of pressure. We have seen how the deep sea provides perfect conditions for advanced consciousness, protected from the chaos of surface storms, insulated from extinction events, nourished by hydrothermal energy, and boundless in time. In such an environment, life could learn to persist for millions of years without interruption, evolving not toward speed and aggression, but toward balance, subtlety, and endurance. We have followed the clues that suggest signs of their presence might already surround us. Strange sounds echoing in the deep geometric patterns carved in the seabed, migrations that defy natural explanation. Each anomaly on its own could be dismissed, but together they create a tapestry that whispers possibility. Like detectives piecing together fragments, we begin to see shapes in the dark. We have considered how contact could transform our future, not only in science and technology, but in consciousness itself. To meet an intelligence that has thrived in silence, that has survived in harmony, that has mastered patience, this would challenge our deepest assumptions about progress, about survival, about what it means to be human. It could be the beginning of a renaissance unlike any we have ever known. But whether or not such beings exist, one truth remains beyond question. Our oceans need protection. Plastic spreads like an artificial reef of waste. Temperatures rise, forcing migrations and extinctions. Acidification erodes the very skeleton of life. Dead zones spread where currents once flourished. Whether the abyss holds civilizations or only ecosystems, its survival is bound to ours. By caring for the ocean, we honor not only our planet, but also the possibility of neighbors hidden in its depths. Wonder itself becomes a form of preparation. To look at the sea and feel awe is not trivial. It is training. It is the posture of readiness. Wonder keeps us from arrogance. Wonder keeps us from fear. Wonder allows us to imagine that we are not alone, that intelligence takes countless forms, that the universe is richer than we have dreamed. Every act of wonder is a rehearsal for the extraordinary. From this moment forward, the ocean will never look the same. Every time you see its surface glinting in the sun, you will wonder what intelligence might be looking back. Every wave that brushes the shore will carry in its foam the possibility of a message from the deep. Every discovery of a new species, every sound caught on hydrophone, every current traced across the sea floor will feel less like data and more like dialogue. This perspective is not only scientific, it is personal. It reshapes how we live, how we act, how we imagine ourselves in the world. To live as if the ocean might be conscious is to live with reverence. To live as if we might someday meet beings who embody patience and wisdom is to live with humility. To live as if we are always on the edge of first contact is to live with anticipation. Whether or not an ocean civilization exists, our responsibility remains the same: to protect the waters, to study them, to revere them. By doing so, we prepare ourselves for any possibility, whether it is partnership with an ancient intelligence or simply the survival of the most magnificent realm on our planet. To live as caretakers rather than conquerors is to take the first step toward worthiness. Perhaps in the end, the question is not whether advanced civilizations dwell in the abyss, but whether we are ready to be worthy neighbors. Are we prepared to share this planet, not only with dolphins and whales, corals and kelp, but with intelligence as ancient and enduring as the tides? Are we ready to accept that we are not the pinnacle of life, but one strand in a web of countless others? The final image is this. Tonight, when you lie in bed, remember that beneath the darkness outside your window lies an even deeper darkness, one that might be filled with ancient wisdom, patient intelligence, and beings who have been waiting longer than we can imagine for the right moment to say hello. Perhaps that moment is closer than we think. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but not forever. And when those secrets are finally revealed, we want to be ready, not with fear, but with wonder. Ready not with weapons, but with open minds. Ready not to conquer, but to meet intelligence as magnificent as the depths that created it.